How are y'all doing?
Well,
yeah, we're doing great.
It's 4 a.m. in Australia, and we're both based here, so it's quite an early start for us.
Well, I appreciate you guys being so excited to be on LayerZero Lounge that you woke up before 5 a.m. I have a 5 a.m. rule for meetings. I'll get up at 5:30. I won't get up beforehand, but I appreciate you guys coming on.
No problem. It's exciting.
Sweet. Well, just to let the audience know, this is LayerZero Lounge. We do this once a week. We have a 20 or 30-minute conversation with someone building on top of LayerZero. Today we have the team over from Peapods coming to join us for the day. We're going to talk about their recent deployment of an OFT, talk about how that works, and then talk about just Peapod in general and maybe its roadmap going into the future. But before we kind of get into that, I know we have two Anons here speaking. Would love to kind of at least get a brief intro. Don't need to go into the deep background, but would love for you guys to say hello.
Yeah, cool. So, look, we're two parts of the team. Our team consists of about 6 team members, and we've all sort of been around the space, particularly around DeFi, for the last 3 to 4 years at least, with experience across various projects in various capacities across the team. So our brand and marketing guys had a lot of work in brand and marketing, both in real world and across DeFi. Intern and myself have worked quite closely with various projects on tokenomics, conceptions, and just generally strategic direction. Our lead dev has done quite a lot of work across the space. If you dig a little deeply into our LTIP grant, a little bit of an insight into it, but despite the fact that we have worked across all these spaces, we really wanted our product to speak for itself. So we didn't want to leverage any of our past work, and we kind of like the fact that it's been able to continue to do that. So that's where we've wanted to place all of our focus, is letting the product speak for itself, because I think it genuinely does speak for itself. Our team spans globally. We've got people from pretty much all corners of the globe within our, despite being a small team, it's quite global. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of who we are as a small introduction, unless you got anything to add, Intern.
No, that was great. Thanks.
Nice. Is the intern actually the intern, or is the intern the CTO? That's usually the question, right?
It's that's up for debate. I'll let you guys decide. Wow, yeah. I think the answer is pretty well known.
That's a fantastic question. Yeah, he's far from intern. He's probably 90% of the brains behind the design and the model and everything that's come to life. So probably the furthest thing you're going to get from an intern, I think.
Yeah, it's a good rule. Anyone who calls themselves an intern, you need to take very seriously. But would love to kind of, but would kind of love to hear a bit more about Peapods in general. I think maybe start with the TLDR, and then maybe we can get a little bit more in depth there.
Well, Meta's been practicing this one, so I'll let him take this one again.
Yeah, I expected that. Okay, so I guess going from the very, very top line level, what Peapods is and what it enables is we are the very first volatility farming protocol in DeFi. We created the primitive, and what that means is volatility farming is essentially the act of creating and then capitalizing on an arbitrage opportunity. So the way we are able to do this is by allowing any user from anywhere to permissionlessly wrap any asset into what we call a pod. A pod functions similar to a vault. So at any point in time, you can unwrap a pod and you can reclaim the underlying assets, meaning that at any time you can claim back the assets that are within a pod. The other thing that happens when you create a pod is that there's fees that are set for wrapping and unwrapping, as well as any buys and sells. And these fees go back to the pod and to the LPs, which means there's an incentivized liquidity pool for every single pod, which makes it liquid. So because the pods are liquid and because they're claimable, what that means is anytime the asset or group of assets that's wrapped into the pod deviates in price, there's an arbitrage opportunity between the pod and the underlying assets. So for instance, if we had ETH in a pod, and today we've seen ETH's gone down by by up to 10% at various points, what someone could do is they could buy ETH, wrap it into PETH, and then sell that PETH for more DAI than they spent to buy the actual ETH to begin with, and closing out the arbitrage loop. So what we do is we actually tokenize the volatility within the market, and we pass that fee back through to all participants of the pod. What's really unique about what Peapods does is most protocols that incentivize liquidity do so with emissions. And where that really goes downhill is over time, those emissions effectively get farmed and they get dumped. And there's net sell pressure, which leads the chart to zero, which then means that the rewards are unappealing. And then ultimately it loses liquidity. It's no longer sticky. So there's two things that we do that kind of combat this. One is that every single reward is paid out based on the dollar value of fees at the time, and it's market bought for Ps. So whether Ps is $2 today or $5 or $10, the dollars per dollar of fees will always be the same. The other thing that we do to ensure that the price has some upward momentum is that 10% of all of the fees that go to LPs will get burned. So that locks in 11.1% net buy pressure on every single reward for perpetuity. So that will never, ever be able to be sold back into the market. We're 100% fully circulating supply. Even with our expansions across L2s, which LayerZero is helping us with, every single token is being bridged from mainnet, or in future will be bridged from mainnet or ARB. There's no additional increase to our supply for any of that.
Interesting. So let's talk about that expansion, because I believe you guys just launched on Arbitrum after being on Ethereum for a while. How did you guys come into the decision to launch on Arbitrum of all chains? We're now in a multi-chain world. There's probably 50 other chains you could have chosen from. And then after that, I'll ask about the LayerZero integration.
Yeah, so there's a couple of really good reasons why we chose Arbitrum. So first and foremost, Arbitrum's currently running a long-term incentive pilot program, which just made the most sense for us to go and target. It meant that we are able to put in an application and potentially
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
receive some ARB tokens that we can then use to incentivize our protocol, because as I mentioned, currently everything is 100% real yield generated by the protocol. So anything additional only strengthens the flywheel, only strengthens how much liquidity we can attract. On top of that, I think Arbitrum's a really solid home for DeFi projects, and it always has been. And we quite liked that to be the place to start, given it's probably still the number one in terms of L2 for volume right now. That said, there's obviously a couple of other really nice options out there that are definitely on our radar right now.
Interesting. When you guys think of cross-chain expansion, for Peapods, does that mean deploying on other chains, or would that be, increasing the, utility of your Arbitrum deployment to like receive outside of Ethereum Arbitrum assets, so like optimism assets into pods on Arbitrum? Like, how do you envision you guys using leveraging the multi-chain world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we've had discussions about this where, because of the way pods work and you need to be able to unwrap the asset at an affordable rate, it doesn't make sense for pods to be bridging to and from ETH and Arbitrum. What does start to make sense is once we launch on Arbitrum, Base, Optimism, Bearer Chain. And it starts to become a low gas environment across all of those chains. There's no reason that we couldn't look to bridge L2/L1 pod tokens cross chain and have those pods that are set up on Arbitrum start to be bridged out to other chains and have to be bridged back to Unwrap. But it's still something that's not 100% finalized on. That's the way that it would definitely go.
Well, the exciting reason why you would potentially do that is one thing that Meta sort of briefly touched on initially, is that in our pod, you can have more than one token. And when you do that, you're effectively creating an index of tokens. Now, having just the protocol live on Arbitrum or just layer 1, you're sort of limited to just the tokens in that ecosystem that you could bunch together and track that the price of those assets together as an index or an ETF. Whereas once you start to go across chain, you can start to look at like all the products or protocols in the space and start to like cherry pick which projects you want to bring their token. And you could choose one platform. Perhaps you like Arbitrum the best. You could bring a project from Optimism and then put it into an index on Arbitrum. The issue becomes then, we need still that path, that arbitrage path to go from Arbitrum to Optimism in that case. So the speed of the bridge from LayerZero matters immensely in that.
Interesting. I feel like there's some fun design stuff we can talk about offline, perhaps there. But I would love to, we have a few minutes left. You announced last Friday, I believe, that users can now bridge in preparation for your platform launch from ETH to Arbitrum using LayerZero, which means Peas is an OFT. Can you kind of talk about the decision to launch Peas as an OFT, how you came across LayerZero, and maybe your mental model for what LayerZero is? Because I think everyone hears LayerZero's perspective on LayerZero, but I always like to hear about the developers building on top of us, what they think of us. So we'd love to hear that.
Well, so worth noting that Meta and I are not the developers, so we can't go too technical in detail. But some of the reasons why we chose LayerZero is that you guys, we very much felt that you're sort of grinding with us with your product and really trying to expand as quickly as possible. And obviously you guys provide this cross-layer messaging service, but we really saw that you're passionate about it and really trying to bring on new chains as soon as they launch and expand when it's safe to do so, of course. And that was very similar to us. We very much want to expand our protocol, and we don't want to be limited by sort of compatibility of different chains. So it's great that you guys expand and also provide sort of a lot of help, technical help, and in terms of like the OFT standard, that it's just easy to implement. So it was a very simple process to move forward with LayerZero. So we love that.
And the other small part I'll add on that is that we also felt it was really important that we went with one solution to get us across all of the ecosystems that we want to get to. It didn't make sense to expose ourselves to multiple bridging options. So the fact that LayerZero was already in place for quite a lot of the protocols, even the ones that are not currently launched, was something that was a really big draw card for us.
Beautiful. Well, we're happy to have you guys. And I guess I probably should have defined OFT first, but OFT stands for Omnichain Fungible Token. You can think of it as like a universal token standard that exists natively across many chains at once. So it's essentially an ERC20 that was built for the multi-chain reality that we exist in. And so as Peapods extends to more chains, they can also extend the Peas OFT to new chains without having to do too much extra development work or going to another third-party bridge or wrapping the asset extensively. OFT just kind of allows you to do this quite simply. So I think it's a great match for both of us. We have about 3 minutes left. I would kind of love to hear what's next for Peapods. I know this was a big launch week for you guys, but is there anything coming soon that our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, we've got a lot of technical developments sort of happening. So improvements to the protocol, just sort of reducing barriers to entry for users, sort of eliminating friction wherever we can, especially to get more TVL in terms of liquidity providers within pods. That's a big focus for us because that's where our revenue is effectively generated from. The deeper the liquidity we have in a pod, the more arbitrage that could happen per transaction, but also more chains, and that shouldn't be a surprise. But the reason we went with LayerZero is that you guys support many chains, and there's really no downside from us going to multiple chains. Through implementing the OFT standard, we're making sure everything bridges from the mainnet, and sort of the total supply has to come from mainnet. So when we bridge to a new chain, we're not expanding the amount of Ps in circulation. We'll still only have that initial limitation of 10 million Ps will ever exist. And on every chain, it's going to be deflationary. So it's all going to add to buy pressure of Ps across all the chains, and then burning from all the fees that have been generated on every chain. And then we'll be relying on the arbitrage happening between the different layers and chains to make sure that the Ps price is consistent throughout.
And on top of that, we've also got a bunch of educational content being worked on, a series of educational videos. They will take a little bit of time to start rolling out, and then they'll start to come out quite quickly once the design studio's got them all ready to go. And obviously, we're also eagerly awaiting some progress on the LTIP process with Arbitrum, as well as, looking to expand to a bunch of other ecosystems that may or may not involve some grant applications there as well.
Nice. That was a heavy pause. It sounded like there's some stuff in the works there. But I really appreciate you guys coming on. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Peapods expansion to more chains. I can envision a world where Peapods uses LZ to move Ps everywhere, but also to allow for like multi-chain, multi-asset pods being unwrapped in a really easy way for end users as you guys kind of continue to expand on top of LZ. Really appreciate you guys getting up early today and hanging out with us. If someone wants to learn a bit more about Peapods, what's the best way to go about that? That's the last cue here. Then we'll jump.
Jump into our Telegram. Between myself, Intern, the rest of the team, and just the community in general, it's pretty rare that someone goes in with a question and doesn't come out having a better understanding of the protocol.
Beautiful. And if Intern doesn't drop memes into that TG, I'll be pretty offended. He looks like he has good memes just by his PFP.
I need to up my meme game. That's a good trigger. Thank you. I will do that.
Well, really appreciate you guys. And until next time, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for hosting us. Cheers.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.